Hey Force friends, I'm a Moose, and if you know who I am, you're probably interested in my takes on firearms. For those who don't know me, I talk about the hidden culture and communication of human beings. Check my page for content on rich code, military corruption, and other subjects here. Just like every other subject in the United States has been hyperpolarized, firearms are no exception. And there's a lot of room for nuance here, but I only got so much time in the day. Right-wing voters would prefer nearly unrestricted access to firearms. If their vision is enacted, you'd be able to walk in the store and easily purchase fully automatic firearms, any caliber of ammunition, suppressors, and any configuration of firearm. They seek to arm teachers in schools and allow people with DV convictions to have firearms, but they'll make concessions for restrictions on mental health. However, some of their other legal efforts betray that notion. For example, they deem transgenderism and other LGBT qualities to be a mental illness that can easily be applied to restrict that population from having firearms. Considering their propensity to claim certain races and ideologies are more prone to violence, you can see how they'll easily apply restrictions to them as well. The American center-right and most of the left, as evidenced by the center-right Democratic Party's actions, seeks to restrict firearms to the maximum legal extent. As far as equipment goes, this basically leaves two firearms as viable options, and those are hunting shotguns and rifles, specifically single-shot or dual-chamber shotguns and rifles that have internal magazines limited to probably about 5 rounds and a caliber limitation as well with that. They would completely ban fully automatic weapons, suppressors, weapons that are less than a certain length, and handguns. However, in practice, they often make exceptions for law enforcement for these tools. You know, that same law enforcement, 40% of which go home and beat their wives. Also, that same law enforcement that abdicates their responsibilities when there are school shooters. And that same law enforcement that breaks up protests. And that same law enforcement that deliberately targets minorities. And that same law enforcement that during protests heavily biases its protection towards right-wingers and violence against left-wingers. And that same law enforcement that the American hard right would like to use as a tool of violence against their ideological opposite. You know, that same law enforcement that's been given immunity by right-wing laws and unquestioning support by right-wing voters. Except in situations like now where it's politically convenient. But you best believe they are so happy to watch those law enforcement beat up on our students. And that same law enforcement that they circle the wagons around when they unjustifiably kill somebody. You know, like the one time the one dude put his knee on another guy's neck for like 8 minutes and it was so loved by the right that they were doing reenactments? Look, needless to say, for most of you, if you thought I was on your side, you're probably starting to doubt that at this point. Now that I've gotten this far, I'm starting to admit that this is going to require its own series. So stand by for part 2, where I continue to elaborate my stance on firearms.